Gideon Marsh had been so long alone that footsteps on his dirt trail brought him to a stop in mid-swing with his axe. 7 women emerged like they had a right there. Tattered dresses, creased faces, eyes narrowed with intent. The tallest woman led the group, auburn hair pulled back tight, her eyes fixed on his. And then, without wincing, she said something completely nonsensical. Uncertain eyes that reminded him of someone he used to know. Perhaps it was the hard defiance in the leader's voice, a tone he hadn't heard since the world in his life began to fall apart. "Stop," Gideon commanded, the command in his tone amazing him. The women halted, turning to him with a mixture of irritation and patience. "No one touches my animals until I know who you are and what you really want." The auburn-haired woman smiled, slow, knowing, and in that smile was something that made Gideon's stomach plummet. "My name is Clarabelle," she replied, her voice firm and unshakable. "And these women? They're family." She nodded toward the others, their gazes locked on him with unnerving fierceness. "Your family, to be precise." The axe dropped from Gideon's hand, coming to a hard stop in the ground like the gavel of a judge. Family. The sound of it struck him like a punch in the side, bringing up memories he'd shoved deep beneath years of isolation. He'd left it all behind, every tie, every relationship, because some wounds ran too deep to repair. "That's impossible," he growled. But even as he spoke, he saw it. The set of Clarabelle's jaw that was like his own. The girl fidgeting nervously by the barn, just as his sister had when she was anxious. The brown eyes, his people's eyes, streaming through them like some birthmark no one could ever wash away. Clarabelle moved forward. That's when he noticed it. A small scar running from her temple to her cheekbone. "You recall this?" she said, touching the old scar. "You threw me off the loft when I was 12. Told me I was too small to play with the big kids." The recollection pierced him with savage starkness. Little Clarabelle, always following him, always attempting to fit in. She'd been his cousin, his mother's sister's child. A member of a vast family that sprawled from county to county, until it disintegrated. "Clara," he breathed. Her name felt foreign after all the years. "But how? How do you know where I am? Why now?" Before he could find his thoughts, another interrupted, low, worn, with a limp to equal the years it bore. "We located you because we had to," spoke the silver-streaked-haired woman. "And we're here because—" Clarabelle cut her off, already walking towards the barn. "We'll tell you, Gideon. But first your animals have to be cared for. You can listen and let us work." She looked back over her shoulder, the tiny movement enough to reveal a glimpse of the girl she once was. "Unless you'd like your cows to suffer while we stand around talking about the past." Without permission, the women stepped forward as if they owned the place. And somehow Gideon tagged along after them. His legs took him before his brain had a chance to latch on. His mind nodded. Names he barely recalled, faces that echoed a past life. Wasn't the youngest one Mercy, Sarah's daughter? She would have been just a tot when he'd departed. And the woman with the limp, how did her face not his stomach in faint recognition? At the gate of the barn, Clarabelle spoke back over her shoulder to him once again. "Warning, cousin, what we have to say to you, it won't be pleasant. But you have to hear it." Her tone held the same shake that she used to have when she was a little girl, just before admitting to shattering something valuable. And as with her then, Gideon prepared himself for impact. Within, the women worked with the precision of clockwork. Clarabelle knelt next to Bessie, the nastiest cow on the property. But beneath her touch, the old girl rose steady and obedient. As milk poured into the pail, Clarabelle at last spoke. "Your sister Sarah died," she said matter-of-factly, not glancing up. "Fever killed her last winter." The words struck him. Sarah, his baby sister. The one who'd always stood up for him, always believed in him. The one who'd wept in the doorway when he'd left for good. Clarabelle continued working. The woman with the limp took station at the second cow. "Before she died, she made us promise something. Made us swear we'd find you and tell you about Mercy." Gideon swung back to the little girl still standing near the door. Her arms clasped the pail as if it were a lifeline, eyes wide and overflowing. He gazed at her, really at her, and his legs almost gave out. Sarah's eyes. Sarah's stubborn chin. Sarah's stance when she was scared but struggling not to let on. That's Sarah's daughter, Clarabelle affirmed softly. Your niece, 15 years old. Working herself to the bone, attempting to put food on the table after Sarah died. Mercy's whisper was nearly soundless. Mama spoke of you every day, told me you were the best man she ever knew, even if you were too obstinate to realize it yourself. Tears streamed down her face, etching paths through the dust of the barn. She told me you didn't go away because you didn't love us anymore. You went away because you had too much hurt. Something cracked inside Gideon's chest. A dam he'd constructed in 3 years was shattering, his silence and loneliness cracking like shattered stone. He'd gone because of that savage fight with his father, words spoken that burned more than bridges. It would have meant taking sides in a war between family members where no one could emerge victorious to remain. But he'd never intended for Sarah to have to pay the price. "Where've you been living?" he said, though part of him wasn't sure he wanted to know. "Here and there," said a voice from one of the women who'd been silent so far. "Mercy's been passed from family home to family home, wearing out welcomes. The rest of us have been getting by somehow or other." Clarabelle wiped her hands clean on her skirt and stepped closer. "That's why we're here, Gideon. We're not just asking to help with your cows. We're asking if there's room in your life for family again." But before he could speak, the thunder of approaching horses echoed across the valley. Clarabelle's face went pale. "Get away from the door," she whispered sharply. Too late. 3 of the riders were already over the hill. Gideon could see their faces, cold, sure, and firmly set over guns. The head rider was a giant of a man, thick beard, and eyes that were like frozen storms. "That's Tobias Cain," whispered the woman with the limp, her voice strained. "He's been following us for 2 days." A cold shiver crept into Gideon's bones. Cain. He'd heard the name. Whispers circulated around saloons and cattle trails. A man who collected his debts in blood, who owned half the county, and didn't mind how he acquired it. "What does he want with you?" "Sarah owed him money," Mercy said, her voice cracking. "For medicine. When she passed, he said the debt fell to the family." She gazed up at Gideon with a fatigue that was not common in a child's eyes. "Now he's tracking us down one at a time. Claims we have to pay off what's due." The hoofbeats increased, neared. Clarabelle stepped to the barn door and peered around a slat in the barn wall. 7 women, she grumbled resentfully. "He wants us in his saloons and houses of ill repute until the debt is paid off. But it's not really about money." She didn't complete, but the clenching of her fists said it all. Something chilly and hard uncoiled inside him. Something he'd put away the day he walked away. He'd vowed to leave violence behind, to step away from anger. But now, to see these women, his people, shrinking in terror as men rode in like owners. "How much does he say he's owed?" 300, Clarabelle said. "And interest accruing every day we're on the run." 300. It might as well have been 3,000. Gideon's meager savings wouldn't cover half. And men like Cain didn't deal in mercy or payment plans. Outside, the riders stopped. Then Cain's voice rang out with exaggerated politeness. "Gideon Marsh, heard you've got some property of mine tucked away in your barn. I'd like it back." Property. Like they were cattle. Gideon reached for his rifle, instincts honed over years snapping back like a spring. But Clarabelle grabbed his arm. "He's got 2 professionals with him," she hissed. "You go out there swinging and he'll cut you down before you can aim." Her grip was iron. "If we go quietly, maybe he leaves you alone." "Like hell," Gideon snarled. The words were from a place deeper than rage. Deeper than raw with grief and shame. "This is home. And your family. Cain can die." But Mercy's gentle voice pierced the rage. "Uncle Gideon," she whispered. "Mama made me swear too. She said if we located you, I couldn't let you waste your life on us. She said you'd already given enough." Outside, Cain's patience snapped.
"I'm counting. To 10. Marsh."
"Then I'm coming in." Gideon looked around the barn, at these women, this family, who'd clawed their way back into his life only to be taken again. Cain's voice thundered through the yard. 8, 9. Gideon gripped his rifle, stepped toward the barn door, but Clarabelle moved in front of him. "There's something else," she said in a rush. "Something you have to know. About Sarah. About why she actually got sick." Gideon went rigid. "What? The medicine wasn't for fever," Mercy whispered, weeping. "Mama fell ill because someone poisoned the well water on our property. Her, and half the neighbors. Everyone fell ill." 10. Cain's boot crashed into the barn door, splintering it open. He burst in like a storm cloud, surrounded by his men. Standing over 6 feet tall, he took up the doorway in sheer bulk, his face grim, his eyes colder than rocks. Scars had etched his knuckles like a book of violence. "Well, well," said Cain, eyes raking the barn as if he were counting stock. "Got the entire collection in one spot. Makes things simpler for me." His gaze lit upon Gideon. "Marsh, ain't it? Heard you went soft. Living like a hermit, but hiding stolen goods." He waved at the women. "That's a hanging offense in some places." "They're not goods," Gideon said, aiming his rifle at Cain's chest. "They're my family." Cain laughed, jagged and cruel. "Family that owes me $300. Plus interest. That's $350 now. But I'm a fair man. You pay up, they stay. You don't? I take what's mine. And if I say to hell with it?" Cain edged a slow step closer. "Then I pull them out and bury you in the back pasture." But Clarabelle was not going to give an inch. She stepped forward, chin up. "Tell him the truth, Tobias. Tell him why you poisoned that well." Cain's smile flickered. "Careful, girl. Some secrets are worth dying for." "You poisoned the water because you wanted Sarah's property," Clarabelle went on, unflappable. "You knew there was silver under it, so you poisoned them, then proposed to purchase them out for pennies." The parts clicked into place in Gideon's mind like the tumblers in a lock. "You murdered my sister. For her property." Cain shrugged. "Business is business." She was too obstinate to negotiate. Then his gaze slid to Mercy, and something in his eyes made Gideon's blood boil. "But don't worry. I'll take good care of these ladies. Especially the young one." That was it. Every shard of guilt, every buried grief, every ounce of anger hardened into resolve. Gideon lifted his rifle. But one of Cain's men moved faster. The barn exploded in the thunder of gunfire. The bullet flew, but it wasn't Gideon who fell. Cain's man let out a yell and fell on his gun, blood streaming down his shoulder. Behind him stood the silver-haired woman, her derringer still smoking, the weapon having been withdrawn from deep within her skirts. "Always carry insurance," she said quietly, grimly. "Learned that from my late husband." Cain whirled, snarling, rage getting the better of him. "You just signed your death warrant, old woman." But he never saw Gideon coming. Gideon's rifle but struck Cain's jaw, sending the giant crashing back into the wall of the barn with a thud. One of the few remaining goons went for his gun, but Clarabelle was already upon him, wielding a milk pail like a warhammer. It slammed into his temple, and he landed hard on the ground, unconscious. Cain wiped the blood from his lip, eyes flashing with something new. Respect. "Well," he said, rising slowly, hands open to demonstrate that he wasn't moving for a gun. "Looks like the old hermit still has some fight left in him," but his voice was measured. "This doesn't change anything, Marsh. You can't fight the whole territory." "Perhaps not," Gideon answered, his rifle still trained on Cain's chest. "But I can sure as hell fight you." Cain's eyes narrowed. "Manslaughter me, and my partners will track down every person you love. Let me leave, perhaps we cut a bargain." His tone was even, but Gideon did not move. "You poisoned my sister," he stated, the words as cold as knives. Cain shrugged with the soulless confidence of a man who saw people as collateral. "I created an opportunity. Sarah chose not to take it." "She chose integrity," Gideon snapped. "But that's all in the past now," Cain said coolly. "I'm looking ahead. I'm thinking about your future." That was when Mercy came forward, her voice firm, hard eyes. He won't let up, Uncle Gideon. Men such as he never do. Not until someone puts a stop to them. Permanently. Cain swung around to face her, his smile cold. Bright little creature, isn't she? Too bad she's going to learn just how ugly the world is. Gideon's finger tightened on the trigger, until Clarabelle gently put out a staying hand on his arm. There's another way, she said. Something Sarah told me before she died. She hid papers. Proof Cain used forged deeds to buy land. For the first time, Cain's facade faltered. In his eyes, genuine fear flickered. Your sister was always too clever for her own good, he said, his voice losing its bravado. Even if those papers are out there, who's going to believe a dead woman and a bunch of desperate females? The territorial Marshal May. The older woman spoke, still holding the derringer steady. Especially when all the families you lied to, the wells you contaminated, the men and women who perished for your silver are revealed in those papers. Cain's thoughts were racing. He was calculating odds, weighing outcomes. At last he spoke. Suppose those papers are real. Suppose they might cause a problem. What do you want? Clarabelle stepped alongside Gideon, her tone firm. The debt is gone. All of it. And you exit this land and never return. Cain set his jaw. And if I don't? Gideon raised his rifle by an inch. Then we see how hard you are. Cain didn't answer. He just backed toward the door, his wounded men struggling to follow. This isn't over, Marsh, he growled. You think you've won something? All you've done is buy time. The sound of retreating hooves faded into silence, and Gideon realized his hands were shaking. The barn didn't feel like just a place for livestock anymore. He rested his rifle against the wall and gazed about at the 7 women who'd returned to his life as if they'd never gone away. The papers, he demanded of Clarabelle. They're authentic? She grinned and removed a package wrapped in oilcloth from her pocket. Authentic as the rising sun. Sarah outsmarted Cain more than he ever realized. She recorded everything. Every counterfeit deed. Every bribe. Every poisoned well. Mercy moved closer, eyes open wide. Mama never told me. She was trying to keep you safe, said the silver-haired woman. Viola, Gideon realized. His aunt. His father's sister. Gone missing when the family had broken apart. Sarah knew Cain would attack anyone who found out. She kept it all a secret to keep you safe. A surge of pride and sorrow welled up within him. Even at her death, Sarah had been thinking ahead, planning, keeping safe. Now what do we do? He asked softly. Now we live, Clarabelle replied. We milk your cows. We farm your land. We make something worthwhile. All 7 of you? He asked, his voice more optimistic than he intended. If you'll take us in, Mercy said. He heard Sarah's spark in her voice, that indomitable determination to keep moving, no matter how things went. We've been scattered for so long. Feels good to belong again. As they wrapped up in the barn and walked toward the house, his house, their house now, Gideon heard them tell stories. Clarabelle, a seamstress who barely scraped by. Viola, taking care of an old rancher who left her nothing. Both of them bearing scars, pieces of a shattered family. But as they walked back together, something changed inside him too. Gone was the angry, only man who'd kept to himself, hiding from the world. In his place was someone who was prepared to fight for something better. For them. You know Cain'll come back, Clarabelle cautioned as they stepped out onto the porch. Let him, Gideon replied, observing Mercy stroking a horse with the soothing firmness that was in their veins. He'll discover something new waiting the next time. That night, his kitchen was filled with the warmth and energy of life once more. Laughter, banging pots, the scent of food he didn't prepare alone. And for the first time in 3 long years, Gideon Marsh sensed the land around him wasn't barren any longer. It was full with hope, with purpose, with family. He remembered Sarah, of the vows that these women had given, of how at times the family you construct becomes greater than the one you were born into. Tomorrow would see more tests, but tonight he was not alone.